Good evening and welcome once more to our time tonight as we're going to be continuing to look in our series called Unlocking Daniel. And tonight I'm going to tell you exactly where we're going for the next couple of weeks because I'm going to tell you we're actually going to finish off Daniel next week. Tonight we're going to cover all of chapter 11. I know it's going to seem like a lot, but the reason I'm going to cover it all at once is because pretty much everybody agrees, that would be the conservative scholars, the liberal scholars, whatever, they all agree that chapter 11, for the most part, has already taken place. And so what we're going to be looking at tonight, for you history buffs, you're probably really going to love it, but we're going to be looking at history, is what we're looking at. Remember, our point of looking at it is because of the way that it's written, it is apocalyptic literature. And our ultimate goal is to get to the book of Revelation, which we're going to start in a couple of weeks' time with our outdoor evening services. And so at the start of July, the first Sunday in July, that night, we're going to be starting the book of Revelation, which means this week and next week, we're going to be finishing Daniel. We're going to finish chapter 11 this week and chapter 12 next week. So we're going to be doing a lot when it comes into it. And so our series, again, it's Unlocking Daniel here. We're going to be getting to the end. But before we really get into it, let's just open with a word of prayer. Let's pray. Father God, I just thank you to be able to share in your word. And the Lord, as we look at your words, I pray that we would know the deeper understanding and how it reveals you. That you truly are sovereign over all things. That you are the one who commands nations, you are the one who rises kings, you're the one who brings them low. And Father, in the end, it is for your glory. And so Father, tonight as we look at the events of Daniel 11 and what has taken place and is what's yet to come, I pray that we are drawn to you and our faith would be strengthened. And Lord, as we study together, may this ultimately be worship to you, and may we see why you should be proclaimed to the nations. And Father, I thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, as I said, tonight I'm not going to drag it on because we got a lot to get through tonight. So I'm going to jump right in. But right before I start that, I want to start here. What we're talking about tonight, I'm given the title, The Foreknowledge of God. The Foreknowledge of God. And as I said, Daniel 11 is one chapter that, depending on your scholarship, you're going to argue over when it was written. And why do I say that? Because chapter 11 is the one chapter that liberal scholars really want to use to say this is evidence that Daniel was written in the 2nd century, not in the 5th century. And you go, why would that be? Well, the reason is because of the prophecies are so accurate. I mean, like they're bang on in the descriptions of them. They say that there's absolutely no way that somebody from the 5th century could predict with that much certainty of what is to come. And then they point to the end point of chapter 11, which we'll get to, and they say, well, that doesn't fit what took place in the 2nd century. And so because of that, this shows that it was written after the fact, and then they tried to guess what would come about. Now, the only way that can hold true, and I'm going to tell you this, it has to come from your starting point. And what I mean by that is the foundation of your thoughts, of your hermeneutics, here is what it's actually would be called, the foundation of your hermeneutics, is going to determine how you interpret the passage. And since the more liberal scholars of today, their elements are coming out of the Enlightenment era, which means prophecy doesn't really exist. So therefore they say it's not prophecy. Yet, if you hold that prophecy is true and that God is over all things and God can foretell what is going to come, then there's no reason to doubt that Daniel was written during the time of the Babylonian Persian empires. And so that's one of the things about Daniel 11, and we're going to unpack that as we go. And I said the most important item is always, you got 2 more weeks to learn this lesson if you haven't learned it yet. It's the sovereignty of God. Now in this one, I'm actually using from chapter 10. chapter 10, 11, and 12 are all one unit. And what do I mean by that? Because you remember, chapter 10, when we looked at it, it's actually Daniel. He received a vision. We're not really told what the vision is. He was praying about it, and after 3 weeks, the angel came to him, and he says to Daniel, I am going to tell you what is there. And the last of the section of 10, he says, verse 21 of chapter 10, but I will tell you what is noted in the scripture of truth. In other words, what is going to happen, what has already been declared. And guess what chapter 11 and 12 is? It's the telling of what's written in the book of truth, or the scripture of truth, depending on which translation you got. And so that's what we're going to be looking at. And this is also why I said last week that the scripture of truth, or the book of truth, seems to be an indication of God's plan for human history and shows his sovereignty. And so that's what we're going to look at. So tonight we're going to do a lot of reading here at the start. So bear with me. We're going to be looking at Daniel chapter 11. And it's the longest chapter at 45 verses. So bear with me as we're going to be reading together. And I'm going to read it from my screen. That way I know what's on the screen. Put it that way. All right, let's begin. Also in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I, stood up to confirm and strengthen him. And now I will tell you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than them all. By his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece. Then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will. And when he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken up and divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, but not among his prosperity, nor according to his dominion with which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be uprooted, even for others besides these. Also, the king of the south shall become strong, as well as one of his princes, and he shall gain power over him and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. And at the end of some years they shall join forces. The daughter of the king of the south shall go to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of her authority, and neither he nor his authority shall stand. But she shall be given up with those who brought her, and with him who begot her, and with him who strengthened her in those times. But from a branch of her roots one shall arise in his place, who shall come with an army, enter the fortress of the king of the north, and deal with them and prevail. And he shall also carry their gods captive to Egypt, with their princes, and their precious articles of silver and gold. And he shall continue more years than the king of the north. Also the king of the north shall come to the kingdom of the king of the south, but shall return to his own land. However, his sons shall stir up strife, and assemble a multitude of great forces. And one shall certainly come and overwhelm and pass through. Then he shall return to his fortress and stir up strife. And the king of the south shall be moved with rage and go out and fight with him, with the king of the north, who shall muster a great multitude. But the multitude shall be given into the hand of his enemy. When he has taken away the multitude, his heart will be lifted up, and he will cast down tens of thousands, but he will not prevail. For the king of the north will return and muster a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come to the end of some years with a great army and much equipment. Now in those times many shall rise up against the king of the south. Also violent men of your people shall exalt themselves in fulfillment of the vision, but they shall fall. So the king of the north shall come and build a siege mound and take a fortified city, and the forces of the south shall not withstand him. Even his choice troops shall have no strength to resist. But he who comes against him shall do according to his own will, and no one shall stand against him. He shall stand in the glorious land with destruction in his power. He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do. And he shall give him the daughter of women to destroy it, but she shall not stand with him, or be for him. After this he shall turn his face to the coastlands, and shall take many. But a ruler shall bring the reproach against them to an end, and with the reproach removed, he shall turn back on him. Then he shall turn his face towards the fortress of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall, and not be found. There shall arise in his place one who imposes taxes on the glorious kingdom. But within a few days he shall be destroyed, but not in anger or in battle. And in his place shall arise a vile person, to whom they will not give the honor of royalty, but he shall come in peaceably, and seize the kingdom by intrigue. With the force of a flood they shall be swept away from before him, and be broken, and also the prince of the covenant. And after the league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully, for he shall come up and be strong with a small number of people. He shall enter peaceably, even into the richest places of the province, and he shall do what his fathers have not done, nor his forefathers. He shall disperse among them the plunder, spoil, and riches, and he shall devise his plans against the strongholds, but only for a time. He shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army, and the king of the south shall be stirred up into battle with a very great and mighty army. But he shall not stand, for they shall devise plans against him. Yes, those who eat of the portions of his delicacies shall destroy him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. Both these kings' hearts shall be bent on evil, and they shall speak lies at the same table, but it shall not prosper, for the end will still be at the appointed time. While returning to his land with great riches, his heart shall be moved against the holy covenant, so he shall do damage and return to his own land. At the appointed time he shall return and go toward the south, but it shall not be like the former or the latter, for ships from Cyprus shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return in rage against the holy covenant and do damage. So he shall return and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant, and forces shall be mustered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress. Then they shall take away the daily sacrifices, and place there the abomination of desolation. Those who do wickedly against the covenant he shall corrupt with flattery. But the people who know their God shall be strong, and carry out great exploits. And those of the people who understand shall instruct many. Yet for many days they shall fall by the sword and flame, by captivity and plundering. Now when they fall, they shall be aided with a little help, but many shall join with them by intrigue. And some of those of understanding shall fall, to refine them, purify them, and make them white, until the time of the end, because it is still for the appointed time. Then the king shall do according to his own will. He shall exalt and magnify himself above every god, shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the wrath has been accomplished. For what has been determined shall be done. He shall regard neither the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall exalt himself above them all. But in their place he shall honor a God of fortresses, and a God which his fathers did not know he shall honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus he shall act against the strongest fortresses with a foreign god, which he shall acknowledge, and advance its glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and divide the land for gain. At the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind with chariots, horsemen, and with many ships, and he shall enter the countries, overwhelm them, and pass through. He shall also enter the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape from his hand: Edom, Moab, and the prominent people of Ammon. He shall stretch out his hand against the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. He shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt. Also the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall follow at his heels. But news from the east and the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go out with a great fury to destroy and annihilate many. And he shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and no one will help him. All right. So that's the chapter 11. As I said, it's a long read, but I'm going to break it down as we go. And I want you to understand, as I said before, that chapter 11, for the most part, has already happened. And just so you know, every time it says king of the north, king of the south, it may not be talking about the same person every time. It'll change. It's just talking, oh, the king of the north does this. And then it could be his son or somebody else who's taken power, and then he's still called the king of the north. In fact, that's exactly what happens, and I'm going to lay out who every single one of them is. As I said, if you're a history buff, this will be a great chapter for you. If you're not, and you hated history, well, bear with it. But the true point of it all is to show God's sovereignty over it all. And that's what we're looking at. Now, one thing I want to point out that I did last time. Do not try to fill in this with modern events. If you remember, when we looked at the beasts that were earlier in Daniel, the 4 beasts and then the 3 beasts, and the first one that comes up is the lion with wings. People are like, oh, that's the lion is Britain, because they have the symbol of the lion, and the eagle is the symbol of the United States. So it's a United States and Britain coalition that's going to... No. And this is why, if you remember back then, I showed you a discovery from Nebuchadnezzar's palace, which showed him depicted as a lion with wings. And so they meant exactly what they meant. Now, so when that comes up, that's what I mean. Because one of the things that often happens, particularly, and I don't know if I'm in agreement with it, but they're like, oh, Rush will do this, and Gog and Magog does this. And then they try to automatically apply that to modern day places. Particularly, they'll talk about, oh, Rush in the scriptures. Well, that sounds like Russia, so that must be Russia. That's what you're not to do. So we're going to break this down. So just again, do not constantly go, oh, because modern countries have this kind of thing. This is happening too. I'll give you another example of how this happens. If you're familiar with the 4 horsemen of Revelation, the first 4 seals, the white, the red, the black, and the pale. And they're like, wait a minute, white, red, black, and green, those are the colors of the Muslim countries. So they must be the Muslim countries. The problem is, it's not the way it works. The colors stand for something, but they're not the Muslim countries. Unless you want to think the Muslim countries are going to conquer everything and cause pestilence all over the world and own the economy of the planet and things like that, it's better to believe that and hold that the horsemen are spiritual beings. They're not the Muslim countries. But that's what I mean when I say don't try to plug modern day stuff into it. But with that, we're going to jump right in. So, the dating is the same, and you might have started this because it says, also in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood up to confirm and strengthen him. The question there is, you got to ask, who's talking? Is it Daniel talking? Well, the answer is no, it's not Daniel. It's the angel. The angel who's come to Daniel, he says, now I'm going to tell you what happened in the scripture of truth. And he goes, also, just so you know, I'm the one who came and strengthened Darius in the first year of Darius the Mede. Now you may go, why would he need it? There's probably a couple of reasons he needed that. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and just for a thing, this is probably the same angel that was dispatched to shut the mouth of the lions. And you go, why would I say that? There's no scripture hard evidence on this. Because it would make sense. He said, I'm the one who strengthened Darius. What did Darius do the second Daniel got out of the pit? He changed the law to declare God. Where did Darius get the strength to do this, to suddenly go to stand up and say, look, I'm not worried about this. I'm not worried about the rebellion. Well, it seems to indicate that an angel showed up to strengthen him. Now, don't take that as gospel. You're free to disagree and argue. I don't care. I'm just putting that out there as a thought. There's no hard line about it, kind of thing. But the first thing that it talks about here, this is why I said that people, they look at Daniel and they're going, this is too accurate. Now, when I read that, and if you're not really familiar with history, you may be going, how is this accurate at all? You're going to see it as I go through it. So the first thing that he says, and now I will tell you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings will arise in Persia. Okay? Start with the kings. Cambius, Pseudo-Smyrtus, Darius, and and then Xerxes. These were the 4 Persian kings, and that's exactly how long they lasted. Now keep in mind, this is before they ever came to power. These are the kings that he's referring to. It says, and the 4th shall be far richer than them all. So there's 4 kings. 3 more kings shall arise. So this is after Cyrus. Then you get Cambyses, Pseudo-Smyrtus, Darius, Xerxes. And Xerxes was far richer than them all. And his strength, through riches, he shall stir up against all the realm of Greece. Now, are you familiar with Xerxes? Or Artaxerxes? Do you know what he did? Now, if you're not familiar with him straight off, most people are at least somewhat familiar with the Battle of Thermopylae. And if you're not familiar with it called that, 300 Spartans stand against the 1,000,000 Persian army. It's not really, that's just an exaggeration done by, it was more than 300 and it wasn't 1,000,000. But the Battle of Thermopylae really was there. He's the king that did it. This Xerxes. And so it nailed it again. And so Xerxes, in his conquest, he went to Greece. That's what he did. And he was the last king. And so the Persian army, the Persian Empire, started to dwindle after that point. Why? Because he spent way too much of their resources on military conquests. And he had a hard time conquering Greece, particularly the Athenians and the Spartans. Why not? The Spartans were a tremendous military ground force. They had perfected I won't say perfected. They used the phalanx with absolute precision. That's where they interlock their shields and their spears come out and they almost form a turtle. And just so you know, that method of attack proved so effective that it was still used by the Romans centuries later. And the Spartans are the one who come up with it, the interlocking shields. Xerxes and Persia was beaten. Notice what he says. Then a mighty king shall arise who shall rule with great dominion according to his own will. In history, who's the one who reigned after Xerxes? Or who's the mighty king? Let's look at the details here. Think about your history. Who was a mighty king who could do whatever he wanted? Then ultimately, in the height of his power, he died. His kingdom was divided into 4, but it did not go to his offsprings. It went to somebody else. It's Alexander. This is a direct reference to Alexander the Great. See what I said? It's so precise. I said, you may not look at it the first time, but this shows the precision of the history. And when he's arisen, his kingdom shall be broken up, and it will be divided to others. Now that's all it really says about Alexander. But that's important to note. Now, we've covered all of this. Now you say, when did we cover all this? Remember, Daniel 7, Daniel 8. They had 2 prophecies of beasts. Daniel 7 was all about the 4 beasts that were to come, the 4 empires leading to the final empire. Daniel chapter 8 talked about the goat and the ram. And the goat comes with 1 horn, smashes, it falls off, gets divided into 4. This chapter 11 is an in-depth look at the ram. The goat. The ram has 2 horns, the goat. That's what this is looking at. Because Daniel really sought out to understand that vision. And so it's Alexander. Let's continue. As I said, I got a lot to get through here. Then it starts talking about the king of the north and the king of the south. This is the Ptolemies versus the Seleucids, which is a war that lasted from 323 to 175 BC. That's really what it is. The king of the south become strong, the king of the north. Now, when people look at this is again why I try to say don't put this in the modern day. Because they're like, oh, the kings of the north are going to come against the south. They're going to attack Israel. And they're like, see, that's Russia and its alliance. They're directly north. No, this is directly speaking about the Ptolemies and the Seleucids. And why do I know that? Because I'm going to unpack every single detail in here that points it out without going through everything. Trust me, I spent a long time reading all the histories. So, notice what it says. At the end of some years, they shall join forces, for the daughter of the king of the south shall go to the king of the north and make an arrangement. The Ptolemaic daughter married a Seleucid king. Ptolemy II, his daughter Bernice, married Antiochus II, and it formed an allegiance. Now, there was a problem with this. Antiochus was already married. And since they really didn't want to hold on to polygamy there, and not only that, just so you know, his former wife, Laodice, she had political pull of her own. So he exiled her, is what he did. Why is that important? Because when she came back, and this is in history, she wormed her way back and poisoned the entire family. She poisoned Bernice, she poisoned Antiochus, she wiped them all out except for one. That's all she did. And look what it says in the scriptures. She shall come, but she shall not retain the power of her authority, and neither he nor his authority shall stand. Why? Because Laodice killed them. That's what happened. But she shall be given up, and those who begot her, and with her who begot her, and with those who strengthened her in those times. But so she wipes out the entire family. That's what Laodice did. Yet, we're not done. Notice what's next. But a branch from her roots. So who are we talking about now? Ptolemy III rises to power. And you know what he does in history? This is recorded history. He avenged his sister. He conquered the land and then went back home. What did it say it did? Then a branch one of her roots shall appear, who shall come with an army, enter the fortress of the king of the north, and deal with them and prevail. And he shall also carry the gods captive to Egypt with their princes. That's what he did. That's exactly what he did. And so you're starting to see it. That's why I said it's so precise. There's these details in here, like imagery of this moving here. The only reason is because Daniel would not know their names. He wasn't told their names. He just told the king would do this. Someone from her branch will do this. And it's exactly what it is. And then the king of the north shall come to the kingdom of the king of the south, but he'll return to his own land. And then it says something about his sons. Well, take a look. Seleucid king Seleucus II, he invades, but he loses. That's exactly what happened. The scriptures said this is going to happen. He would come, but he's going to return, which means he didn't return victorious. He lost. And when he gets back, it says his sons will stir up. And his sons, Seleucus III and Antiochus III, or Antiochus the Great, they continue the fight. So his two sons fight on. And they push the border of the kingdom of the Seleucid Empire all the way back. I'm sorry, Ptolemy. Yeah, you push the Seleucid Empire back. So you got to keep the armies straight. That's how it goes here. So what you got here is exactly what happens. And Antiochus the Great, he continues to fight, and he pushes the border to the south of Israel. The king of the north pushes the battle all the way back. This is what he does. So if you pay attention to Israel, this is what the thing is here. The land of Israel has changed hands kind of multiple times here. It's going north, going south, going north, going south. And if you're ever wondering why, because Israel, although it's a small sliver of land, David built Jerusalem very strategically. There are trade routes for that whole area, and 3 of them go through Israel. 2 of them, I think, specifically go through Jerusalem. And if a king can control the trade routes, you control everything. You can control the money. You can become wealthy. How do you think Solomon got so wealthy? He used the same thing. Solomon wasn't at war, so he didn't get it by loot, trade, taxes. And so the fight continues on. This is what it's talking about with such precision. And then let's continue. When he has taken away the multitude, his heart will be lifted up, and he will cast down tens of thousands, but he will not prevail. So what's going to happen to Antiochus? Well, there is continue, verse 13 to 20. The military campaign of Antiochus the Great. That's what it's talking about. So what's going to happen? For the king of the north will return and muster a great multitude. The former, they'll come and they'll continue to fight. And he shall certainly come at the end of some years with a great army and much equipment. Now those who rise up, they continue to fight. Like I said, it's just back and forth, back and forth. That's what's going on here. And this section is all his military campaign. That's really what it is. So the king of the north shall come and build a siege man and take a fortified city. I didn't write it down, but you actually can look up the name of the fortified city that he took. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. And it says, even his choice troops shall have no strength to stand. But he who comes against him shall do so according to his own will, and he shall he shall stand in the glorious land with destruction in his power. He shall also set his face to enter the strength of the kingdom, and upright runs with him, and thus he shall do. He shall give to destroy, he shall give him the daughter of women to destroy it. Now, what happened to Antiochus? So, after this, he shall turn his face to the coastlands and shall take many, but a ruler shall bring reproach to them to the end, and with reproach removed, he shall turn back. What has happened here is he comes in, the battle. I'm trying to think what's going on. Why am I thinking them ahead of here? With Antiochus IV. Not quite, though. All right. You got to remember there's 4 Antiochuses here. I'm trying to understand how I got the thing here. I worked this earlier in the week. It's been a while since I've looked at it. Siege man, the king shall not withstand him, but he who comes against him shall do according to his own will and destruction. That's down in verse 16. I'm not far enough. I think I want further too. That was 16 I was reading. Look. Yeah, I'm just wondering if I got myself ahead. It's all right. No, it might not be here. Let me skip ahead. Yeah, I missed a section. Somewhere's in there. I think what I did is I've got almost Antiochus III and Antiochus IV getting confused together here. Is what's happened. Yeah. That's what okay, I've got 2 things going here. These are the daughters of Antiochus III, his military campaign. Then it starts to pick up with later. Because it's Antiochus IV who is attacking. Antiochus the Great, he does marry off his daughter to the Ptolemy Empire. And what he was going for, I'll tell you here, this is history. He marries his daughter Cleopatra to Ptolemy. He's trying to build one empire through political marriage. And what he's hoping is that the offspring of his daughter and the Ptolemy, so you got a Seleucid and a Ptolemaic bloodline combined, which would give him the right to both thrones. But it doesn't work out, obviously, is what happens. And as time goes on, so he does. No, he comes in, and the only reason he's ultimately stopped is Rome steps in. This is Antiochus III. Antiochus III gets stopped by Rome itself. They're the ones who come up, and he turns home. And because of that, he gets hit with reparations by Rome. And they start taxing him heavily, is what happens. So, on his way back, he turns his eyes towards Jerusalem. Why would he turn his eyes towards Jerusalem? Guess what they have in Jerusalem? A really nice temple. Guess what's in the temple? nice treasures. And that's what he's trying to do. And he tries to come in, and he tries ultimately, because he's now got a reproach with them, he tries to go and plunder the Elysmius temple, or the temple in Elysmius, for it, but he gets killed. And Seleucus IV takes over. And he's assassinated by Heliodorus. By the most believe, sorry, let me correct that. Believe by Heliodorus. Here it is. So verse 18, when I said about the Romans come, verse 18, after this he shall turn his face towards the coastland, he shall take many, but a ruler shall bring the reproach against them to an end. That was Rome coming up and stopping him, is what it was. And then he shall turn his face towards the fortress of his own land. That's when he went to the temple in Elysmius, and he shall fall. That's verse 19. There we go. Now I caught up where I was. And he is fallen. One shall take his place who imposes taxes. That was Seleucus IV. And he's still got to pay the Roman, the Roman reparations. And he imposed taxes on the glorious kingdom. But within a few days he shall be destroyed, but not in anger or in battle. How was he destroyed? Assassinated. He was assassinated by Heliodorus, most believe. That's what's happening. All right. Sorry about that confusion. Like I said, it gets rough in there. So yes, Antiochus comes in, he gets beat, returns home. You got to pay the reparations from Rome to rebuild. Tries to steal it from a temple, gets killed because they're like, you're not taking our stuff. One of the next ruler comes up, Seleucus IV. He tries to do everything by taxing everything to try to pay back everything, the money that they owe. He was assassinated. And so it continues on. That's all it says about him. He rose up, imposes taxes, and he dies. And truthfully, in history, that's pretty much all he did. Kind of thing. Now let's go forth. All right. Now we're in Antiochus IV. And in his place shall arise a vile person to whom they will not give the honor of royalty, but he shall come in peaceably and seize the kingdom by intrigue. Antiochus IV was actually a general at first. And he comes in, and he doesn't conquer by military power. He is shrewd. And he rises to power. As he gets power, what he does, he rises promising friendship. And then the second he sees weakness, he exploits it. He absolutely does whatever he can. A great example of this is Antiochus IV. He defeats a strong Egypt, and during the peace talks, he schemes. That's what it's talking about there later. So Egypt was very, very powerful. He wasn't. But he got an alliance, and with the alliance, they conquered Egypt. This is what happened. And guess what happened to that strong military army of Egypt? It was scattered. This is exactly what it says. He will disperse the armies. So he's using, and he does. He comes in by intrigue. He comes in by making promises. And that's how Antiochus got his power. And this is why I was getting confused, because he's similar to Antiochus III. And here's why. Antiochus defeats the strong Egypt, schemes, and on his way home, guess what he does? He stops in Jerusalem. And he sacks the temple. That's what he does. That's what I said. I was pretty sure, I'm like, why are they so similar? Because they are. He does something very similar to what his grandfather did, basically, Antiochus III. And he sacks the temple. And then he stops the sacrifices, and then he goes home. And then what happens is he comes back and he attacks Egypt. And guess who steps in again? Rome. Rome's like, you're getting too big for your britches. Remember, Antiochus got the power by being scheming and conniving. And in Rome eventually is like, we don't want this. Now he served Rome, he served the god Zeus. And so that's why when one of the abominations of desolation is he puts a statue of Zeus in the temple. And this is where what you get is Rome steps in. You get a famous event where the general draws a circle around Antiochus and says, that's all you get, go home. And Antiochus is so mad, guess who he decides to take it out on? Jerusalem. And he takes it on Jerusalem. And what does he do this time? He ends the sacrifices, puts up the statue to Zeus, sacrifices a pig in the Holy of Holies, and desecrated it all. Now, the first time when I said he stops the sacrifice, you got to remember back then, you got a whole issue with the Jewish high priest at that point, where Antiochus is he's putting whoever agrees with him in power. He removes one high priest because another one who's a cousin or a brother pays Antiochus money, and pays him money, and I said, okay. And you know how he's taken out? By somebody else who says, I'll pay you even more. And Antiochus like, I don't care. Sure. And so what happens when you've got a Hellenized high priest? That means you got a high priest who is compromised, who's holding to Roman teachings and not Jewish teachings anymore. And you've got on the other side, you've got a Jewish high priest who's going to hold to the Jewish teachings. What do you think's going to happen? You're going to have a fight. Wait a minute. That's what it says happens. That's what's going on here. They're going to fight at each other. And did this happen in history? Sure it did. The Maccabean revolt. This is where it comes to. Look, verse 32 to 35. Where it says, those who do wickedly against the covenant, he shall corrupt with flattery. Those who capitulated, those who said, sure, he put in power. He rose up, but the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. And those of the people who understand shall instruct many, yet for many days they shall fall by the sword and flame, by captivity and plundering. Now when they fall, they shall be aided with a little help, but many shall join them by intrigue, which means people are suddenly getting on board because they're now interested in all of this. And some of those of understanding shall fall to refine them, purify them, and make them white until the time of the end, because it is still for the appointed time. This was the Maccabean revolt. That's what that was. And so as you look at this, as I said, if you pay close attention, every single detail matches up with history exactly. And we have the benefit of being after it, so we can look back. Now again, why is this so important to look at? And some of this is fascinating. It's like, oh wow, even if I messed up the center there, and I'm sure a history buff will correct all my errors. Just the way it goes. Why? Because it shows that this was fulfilled literally. Not spiritually, not figuratively, literally. Even if someone's like, oh, the king of the north did this, king south does this, and when you start to work it out, it lines up exactly. When we looked at Daniel 9 and in the forecoming of the Messiah, it matched up perfectly. And so when we get to the book of Revelation, one of the things that people want to do with Revelation, they acknowledge it's apocalyptic literature. What they want to do is make everything figurative or spiritualize everything and say, well, it means this. No. If everything else from Daniel, which is the same type of literature, even though it has some of the animal pictures in it and things like that, it was still literal. There are symbolic meanings in it, obviously. Alexander really wasn't a goat. Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon really wasn't a lion with wings. But they stood for very real things. You don't just spiritualize it and say, oh, that's just a mythical thing. No, we're like, this is what happened. And what you see here in Daniel, especially chapter 11, is how it's laid out specifically. What is going to come, and it was fulfilled exactly according to what God had said. But we're still not done here. I want to get to the last section of this, because it gives you just get a description of Antiochus for a while. The way he'll act, what he'll accomplish, He'll neither regard anybody. He'll do whatever he sees fit, that kind of thing. And thus he shall act. He'll act against the strongest fortress with a foreign god, and he shall acknowledge and advance its glory. That's exactly what Antiochus did. Think about the temple. And he shall cause them to rule over many and divide the land for gain. That's what he did. Now, up to that point, every scholar agrees. Liberal, conservative, non-Christian, Christian, they all agree that Daniel 11 to that point is exactly in history. There's no arguments. Then you get this last section, verse 40 and to 45. And this is where we're going to spend some time here a little bit. Because the question is, who is it talking about? And this is where the disagreement is. Because it says here that this final king of the north, that he dies supernaturally. Antiochus didn't. And so, while on the liberal side of this, the liberal scholars, they'll say, see, they got it wrong, which proves it's not real. They wrote it later, and they guessed on the ending and got it wrong. But what if it doesn't apply to Antiochus? What if it's looking far further? That Antiochus, his description ends at the end of verse 39. And notices, at the time of the end, the king of the south. But we haven't even been really talking about the king of the south or north at the moment. We're talking about one man who did all this. And since it says the time of the end, is that talking about the end of Antiochus? Or is it talking about the end of time? In other words, the end of the book. Things are going to continue. Is it talking about, as I said, Antiochus IV or someone else? And I think one of the kind of clues of this, from all on, verse 36 to 39, one of the things, that's what I say, is that talking about him or somebody else? It's possible 36 to 39 is somebody else. And why do I say that? This is why I'm backing up here. And some of those understandings shall fall and refine them. That was the Maccabean war. Then it says, then the king shall do his own will. He exalt, magnify himself above every god, shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods, and shall prosper till wrath has been accomplished, and for what has been determined shall be done. The reason I want to mention this, this is where is this talk about Antiochus. Verse 36 to verse 39. Antiochus served gods. I said, why do you think you put up a statue of Zeus in the temple? This doesn't seem to fit Antiochus. Antiochus regarded the gods of his father. In other words, he's the one who did all these things. And notice that it says, he shall prosper till the wrath has been accomplished. What wrath? Up to that point, what's it been talking about? The Ptolemaic and Seleucid War. Why all of a sudden this talk about until the wrath has been completed? Do we know of a wrath that is coming? I'm sure we do. And so verse 36 to verse 39 does not seem to be talking about Antiochus. It's talking about somebody else. This other king. And it seems what has happened is it's blended the two together. So Antiochus, on the appointed time, he's going to do this. And up to that point, he's going to do what he wants because it's still for the appointed time. And then the question is, what's the appointed time? Is it his death? Is it something else? Or is it the appointed time that is constantly going to be talked about? And I'm going to give you one of the strongest arguments that I see in this that kind of depict this. First, look at verse 45 of the last verse here. he shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. What is that place? Now that's where you're going to know your Israelite geography. That's the plain of Megiddo, or in Hebrew, Armageddon. He plants his tents in Armageddon. Why? Antiochus never did this, but this king does. Where do we run into that again? The end of the book of Revelation. Let me show you just briefly here, because we'll get to this in the study in Revelation. Where are we at here? Oh, I gotta find the right seventh bowl. Oh. Sorry. Oh, that's why I should have looked at this one ahead of time. Yeah. Sorry. But you can, I'll have to buy it for now. I don't have time to. The battle, it just talks about them, but you'll find it in earlier on. I should have time tonight. It's off my head right now. But he gathers everybody. It's one of those things, we call it the Battle of Armageddon, but it's not. It says they gather at Armageddon. Is it 1919? No, that just says they make gather. It just says their fate. It's not saying the place. And I saw the beast, the kings of the earth, and the armies gathered together to make war. But actually, another spot, it says at the field of Armageddon. They gather at Armageddon. If I wasn't live, I'd look it up pretty quick. And so you get the same place. This king in Daniel 11 gathers his armies at Armageddon, or Megiddo. The Antichrist, in the end, gathers at Megiddo in Armageddon. The other thing I want you to note about the time, it's actually going to be, I'm going to jump into chapter 12 here just for a second. At that time, when this king gathers at Armageddon, Michael shall stand up, the great prince. So what time is that? Second. And at that time your people shall be delivered, every one who is found written in the book of life, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to everlasting contempt. Those who are wise will shine like the burning. What's he talking about? When's that going to happen? When Christ returns. The dead shall rise. This is not Antiochus. This section can't be Antiochus, because it's pointing to something far future. And Daniel is trying to figure it out, and you'll see in chapter 12, and he's told, leave it alone. That's not for you. Well, who's it for then? That last message is for somebody else. And the recording of Antiochus ends at verse 35. It's this other king who's going to arise. And what you get a glimpse of here, truthfully, is the reign of the Antichrist. You don't think that one of the things that I think that we get mistaken is that we think that he's going to have absolute power over absolutely everything. In other words, that all the nations are going to fall under and they're going to do exactly. But you get a glimpse here where it's not the case. You got to think, after the wrath of God has come, think about what's left of the earth. A third of the trees have been burnt. Grass has been burnt. Crops have been burnt. Drinkable water is pretty much gone. The population of the earth is cut to a quarter of what it would be, of what it will be at the time. What do you think the moods of people is going to be against the leader of all this? They're not going to be like, oh, happy day. No, they're going to be rebellions. There's going to be upsets. And he's going to be putting them down, is what's going to happen. And at the time, the king of the south shall attack him, the king of the north shall come against him. Now notice that. How can that be Antiochus? The king of the south and the king of the north are going to be against him. But he's going to overcome them. He's going to overcome Jerusalem. He's going to overcome Israel. He's going to go against Egypt. He's going to conquer that whole area, with the exception that Edom, Moab, and the prominent people of Ammon are going to escape. That's it, from that area. So he's going to conquer. You think of Alexander the Great's empire. He's got all of that, and he's got all this power. And in his conquest, it says, news from the east and from the north shall trouble him. Therefore, he shall go out with a great fury and annihilate many. You got a good rebellion going on here that he puts down. Pretty good. And that also makes sense. You go, how does that make sense? In Revelation, it also talks about how 3 kings are given power just for an hour. And what do? Their job is to give power back. That would fit right here. They're rising up rebellion against him. What does he do? He removes them. He conquers in fury, rises them up. And what do? They just bow their allegiance. That's basically what they do. And then in the end, he gathers his tent. This last section is not Antiochus, as I said. It's the one who's to come. And it's not, for the first while, it may be all peaceful when he rises to power, but he's going to be like Antiochus. This is why it's together. And what do I mean by that? How did Antiochus get to power? Not military might. He did it by cunning and deception. And the one to come, he'll arise not through military power. He'll get there by cunning and deception. And he'll rise to power. And so it'll be in the same vein, but he is even worse than Antiochus. Antiochus IV is what you can classify as a prototype for it. But he's not the one. And Daniel gives a picture of the one who is to come. And so when you look at Daniel 11, 1 through 35, and you see how specific the prophecies are, that when you then read 36 to the end of the chapter, it's going to be just as specific. You can't just spiritualize this. It's going to be a time that a ruler is going to come, then a king who's going to come. He's going to do whatever he wants to do. Think of Trump, except worse. Think of, North Korea. I want to say Judgment Singh, but no, it's not him. Oh my goodness, lost his name. Someone tell me, but North Korea, and he does whatever Kim Jong-un, he does whatever he wants. It's going to be that, but far worse. He's going to do anything he wants, and he's going to deny the things of God, and people are going to like that. Why? No more restrictions. No more rules. You fall in line. And in place, he's going to honor a God of fortresses, which is a God his fathers did not know. What's he going to do? It means he's going to rule by might in the end. He's going to rule by force and power. And he's got to keep people happy. Why? And his fathers know. And he shall honor with gold and silver, precious stones, and present things. It shows he's going to give people stuff. And they're going to follow. Not to be mean here in politics a little bit, how did Biden get so many votes the second time he ran? Or when he ran? Did he run once or twice? Once. Because he promised student loan forgiveness. And that was a huge campaign thing that they call it, that the university students, age students, voted for. Because they wanted their debts wiped out. You get somebody who's going to rise up and I'm going to shut down those who disagree, and I'm going to look after everybody who does what's right, does what agrees with me. That's what Antiochus did. He's like, yeah, they're going to fall in lines. And it says and then he'll do whatever he wants. And he's going to rise himself as God, but his end will come all the same. Why? Because God is sovereign. And we can be sure these things will take place because it is written in the book of truth. And that's what will happen. All right, we'll stop there for tonight. Again, I'll apologize for the mix-up there because I confused myself a little bit with Antiochus III because he's similar to Antiochus IV. Similar things happened in their reigns where they went to conquer and Rome had to step in and push them back for a little bit. And it might not have been Rome and Antiochus III. I'd have to look up again. But it was a coastal people who showed up and forced him back. But I'm pretty sure it's Rome. And then Antiochus IV did the exact same thing, where he got too big for his britches and Rome cut him back. And in the end, even though I am completely fallible, you can look up and compare Daniel 11 to the Ptolemaic and Seleucid wars, and you'll see that it matches exactly what took place. And you can look up and they'll give you the names of all the kings that each one matches, what has happened, the deceptions. You can even look up who Antiochus IV joined forces with, and they talked and deceived each other at the table. That's all recorded history. And so, but the ultimate point is know this, that God is sovereign over it all. And with that, you can have trust in God that it will come to pass. As I said, we'll stop there. I'll give a bit of time if there's any questions or whatnot, and I'll admit my knowledge of history of that period's not the strongest. I'm a little better in Roman history after that, more than the Ptolemaics and Seleucids. That's probably my weakness in the area. And it makes sense if you understand that's the intertestamental period, so I'm a lot better in the Babylonian, Persian empires. But are there any questions, discussion, insight? There it is. I knew it was around there. I didn't have time. I was in that section. That the gathering of Armageddon, Revelation 16:16 for those who take notes. I knew it was in the bowls. I was looking for a little bit. Yeah. And they shall gather together in the place that is called in Hebrew Armageddon, is what it is. Yep. And that matches up. So Revelation 16:16 is the cross reference there of Daniel 11:45.
So this, what we were talking about the last week, which is, would that be what's referred to in Revelation as the Antichrist? Or is that
yes, that would be the Antichrist. As I said, when you put it together, the beast, and he does what he wants, he sets up his tents in Armageddon, in Megiddo, and then you compare that, as I said, with Revelation, the beast does the same thing, sends out the demons or whatnot, if you want, in this case, the frogs are symbolized the demons, and he gathers an army at the place called Armageddon. That's not where the battle is, but that's where the forces are gathered, and that matches up. And notice, the reason I say that is because, again, just look at Daniel 11. And he shall plant his tents, the tents of his palace, which means he's camped there. That's not where his palace is. He's camping there. He's setting up for a spot. His palace, more than likely, is in this Babylon that is mentioned. And in Revelation, you'll get to that. Babylon is like three things, not one. It's multiple things. And it can get a little confusing if you're not paying attention, but it's similar to the book of Isaiah, where Israel is more than just one thing. Israel's a place, but it's also a person at the same time. And so in Revelation, you get the counterpart to that, where Babylon is a place and a system at the same time, kind of thing. Yes. All right. Well, if there's no questions, and I hadn't confused you a whole lot in there, but like I said, most of that is history. The more important part's the last section of that. And just remember that God is sovereign over it all. A couple announcements. Next week, we'll finish Daniel chapter 12. And then after that, we'll begin our outdoor services. I've got a bit of equipment for it that it's just going to be a stream, but like I said, it's going to be a picture of me kind of sitting there. The other thing is, with the outdoor services, I'm going to stream the teaching, but outdoor services do not start at 6 o'clock, or the teaching doesn't start at 6 o'clock. It usually starts, depending on the night, 6:15, 6:30, depending on how the night goes. But it's a time where we sing together, we share testimonies together, we pray together. All that takes place beforehand as well. And if you're in our area, you can come on out. If you're part of our church family, you'd like to host one of those, there's still 2 spots left to sign up. July 31st and whatever the last Sunday in August is. I think it's the 24th maybe, something like that, 26th. Don't know off the top of my head. I have to look at the calendar. You can sign up for that and we'll come to you. The other one that I want to push out a little bit is a couple of weeks' time, our fun day is coming up. We'll start to advertise that a little heavier. Our fun day is coming up. It's going to be a great time, usually always is. If it rains on that day, it just goes to the next week. That's kind of how it works. So be aware of that's coming up. We'll advertise that more to come. I just realized I still got the notes all on the screen. If you want to look at those. Other than that, as always, I pray that the Lord will continue to bless you, that you walk with Him, and may you grow in the faith and knowledge of Him. May you continue to trust in His sovereignty, knowing His word will come to pass, and therefore there is nothing to fear. May His blessing be with you till we're together again.